7 teams in the tourney. You would need a huge legal pad to fill it all out the bracket. Here's the problem. You divide 357 by 4, you get an odd number. So it would have to be a 189 matchup, which leaves one poor team out. Could you imagine how bad your season is? Like, yeah, they're inviting every other college team to the tournament except us, guys. We've got to get them next year.
And Nick, you have a little more to add on this, no?
Yeah, I can't believe, Wilds, you fell for this, because it's so obvious what the NCAA and the ACC are trying to do here. It's the way you get a long guys' weekend in Vegas. So let me explain it. Your buddy calls you up. He's like, hey, let's go to Vegas, do our fantasy draft over a long weekend there. You're like, how am I going to sell this to my wife? So you go to your wife, you're like, hey, Tommy, he's having a bachelor party in Thailand. We're going to be there a week. She's like, are you out of your mind? You're not. You're like, hey, it's set up. A few days later, you come back to her. You're like, hey, plans changed. Long weekend in Vegas instead. Something she would have hated. Now she's like, that sounds great. Go do it. This is all just to get 96 teams in the tournament. They come out yesterday, they're like, we're going to do 96 teams. Everyone's going to be like, oh, that's terrible. But if you set it at 356, the folks who would have hated 96 are going to say, oh, okay, I can live with it. I know what you're doing, NCAA. I've done it before myself. It's a heady play by you, but I'm on to you, Jenna.
I could literally do an entire show on what you just said. I love it. Adam Duvall, the Braves outfielder, had himself a day. Hit not one, not two, 3 home runs in a game. Didn't do it once. Last Wednesday, he hit 3 home runs in a game. 2 3-home-run games. Hank Aaron didn't do that. Chipper Jones never did that for the Braves. And he had 9 RBI. And the Braves beat the Marlins 29-9. And before the game, he said this to his wife: whatever happens tonight is for you. So as you guys now know, Adam Duvall is my favorite athlete of all time.
That was
all
bold.
time, because I'm not hyperbolic at all. All right, guys, let's talk some football. The Kansas City Chiefs open their title defense tonight against the Texans. Fox Bet has us Kansas City as 9.5-point favorites here, as does Nick and Nick's family and everyone Nick knows. The Chiefs' Super Bowl roster still mostly intact, while the Texans playing their first game without DeAndre Hopkins, without David Johnson, and Brandon Cooks is listed as questionable with that quad injury. So, Brandon, I got to ask you, given all of that, what would you say is the key now to this game this evening?
Deshaun Watson. I mean, this is why you get paid the big bucks. There's so many storylines and there's so many different matchups that we can talk about. The fundamentals of football doesn't change, okay? Third down, that's something we need to watch as fans, to sit back and see if your team is converting at 45% conversion on third down. If they are, they're probably in the top 5 in the NFL. If you do that, that means that your team could potentially make the playoffs and win a Super Bowl. And then there's the red zone. Then there's also situational football, closing out the first half, 2-minute drives. But at the end of the day, it has to go back to Deshaun Watson. He doesn't have DeAndre Hopkins. You just talked about Brandon Cooks. I want to see the maturation of Deshaun. We all know that this guy is capable of winning multiple championships in the right situation. But when you look at his game, he does the hardest thing easy. He makes the hard play. He makes the toughest pass. He does that. But I want to see Deshaun drop back, go to 1, go to 2, go to check down. I want to see Deshaun Watson drop back, go to his first read, his second read, and then throw it away. I don't want to see him taking any more hits like this. If Deshaun Watson, can do this, we're looking at a team that can really be a contender. This guy, he's the key to success for not only this game, but for the rest of the year.
So, listen, I think for the rest of the year, Brandon, I agree with you entirely. Like, the Texans are going to go through Deshaun Watson. And for this game in particular, though, I disagree somewhat. Because we just saw these teams play, and Deshaun Watson led his team to 31 points, and they got whooped by 3 touchdowns. And so, to me, there is a bigger question, which is, what have the Texans done to change the dynamics of their defense, which is incredibly weak, aside from J.J. Watt and maybe Whitney Merciless, up against this Chiefs offense? Because they cannot guard Kelsey without doubling him, and they cannot guard Tyreek Hill without doubling him. And so if that's the situation, then it almost does become a can you outscore the Chiefs type of game. And, man, I don't know if they want to get into that battle. Now, they did get good news this morning. I think Tom Pelissero reported that Brandon Cooks, who's questionable, that they do think he's going to be able to play, which is absolutely key. The biggest weakness on this Chiefs roster is their corners. You are going to have to be able to take advantage of mediocre at best cornerback play by the Kansas City Chiefs if you're going to have any chance. And to your point about Deshaun not getting hit, can you keep Deshaun upright? They played the Chiefs twice last year. Neither one of those games, Chris Jones was on the field. So now all of a sudden the Chiefs add their best defensive player to the mix. I just think this is a really, really rough spot for Deshaun and the Texans, and the onus is going to be on them to try to keep up Wilds with the highest flying offense in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only danger that the Chiefs really have here is if they let their first Super Bowl since the Nixon administration get to their head and really lose focus at the task on hand. But I don't think they did, Nick. And Brandon, I'd like your take on this. And I mean, granted, right after they won the Super Bowl, Kelsey got up there and said, the dynasty is just beginning. And, so be it. And then they certainly at the parade, they're chugging beers and having fun. But, who doesn't? And then, and then in July, after he signs his deal, Mahomes releases the video that says they're chasing a dynasty. Okay, that's fine. 24 hours later, the Chiefs put out another tweet that says, no, we're not chasing the dynasty. We're actually building the dynasty. And okay, that's still, you're not totally focused on this year. And 2 weeks later after that, Chris Jones said, we want another parade and another parade and another parade. We're going to make sure we don't have not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5+ Super Bowls. But again, Nick, I think they're focused. I don't think they're just trying to do Patriots cosplay here. And then, of course, Tyreek Hill enters the chat, and he says, why are we talking about 5, guys? I don't think we should be talking about 5. I think we're chasing Michael Jordan. We're cross-sport. So I'm going to go 5 to 7. I'll just keep going. So, Brandon, I understand how a lot of Chiefs doubters think that they have taken the eye off the ball and are actually looking a decade ahead instead of looking at the Texans. I personally am not one of them. Do you think that they've kept their focus enough for this opening matchup?
You know what, Wiles, that you did a phenomenal job of laying that out for all of us. And obviously, that message has cascaded down to the avid fan, the Chiefs fan. We have our guy, Nick Wright, on this show. Every time we not only talk about the Chiefs, we just talk about football. And he's talking about, we're Super Bowl champs. Jenna, make sure you put respect on her name and you say Super Bowl champs.
Correct.
You
should do that.
This
says it right there, champs.
This is a classic example of Super Bowl hangover. That's what this is, Nick Wright. You are the perfect example of why it's hard to repeat. So we appreciate you for standing up as a fan, but this is not the way to go. You got to put your actions behind those words. And I do believe you're right, Wilds. I do believe this is a team. Mahomes, Andy Reid have great, Matthew. This is a team that have great leadership. They want to win. They're more than capable of winning. 100%. Go ahead, Jenna.
Before I throw it to you, we have Eric Mangini. Hold on. We have